Welcome to the briefing for the March ordinary meeting. I have an apology from the Mayor, who's going to be travelling to Canberra for the LGA catch-up. No other apologies. I've got a couple of staff away. There's an LGMA forum on today in Bundaberg. I've got a couple of staff at that. So I'll go around to the table and just ask for any conflicts of interest, please.
Start with me?
Yep.
I'll be declaring a conflict of interest leaving the room in E1 and K1.
E1 and K1, okay. Councillor Bartels?
No conflicts.
No. Councillor Rono? Mm-hmm. Oh. Yep.
My son is the author of the report, and I'll be staying in the meeting
For that one.
that one.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McPhee, nothing. Councillor Barnes?
None.
No. Councillor McLaughlin?
No conflict.
Councillor Haberman? Councillor Cooper?
No.
Councillor Mitchell?
No conflicts.
Councillor Leamoth? You always have one, come on. No, none today? All right, we'll move on to the first item then, which is E1, a Memorandum of Understanding with RDA Wide Bay Burnett. Ben?
I'll be leaving for this as I'm the chair of RDA.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
May.
And we've got... Oh, sorry, we've got a couple of people on Teams. Righto, Ben.
Okay.
Yes.
Morning, councillors. Item E1 is in relation to a recommendation authorising the CEO to enter into a memorandum of understanding with Regional Development Australia Wide Bay Burnett in relation to the Jobs Bundaberg Committee and Jobs Bundaberg. Councillors will be aware that DESBT, the state government, established a regional jobs committee late last year. That's funded by DESBT, who have contracted the RDA to deliver the action plan and outcomes under the Regional Jobs Committee. The Regional Jobs Committee has an action plan and a charter, and that charter is very similar to one of Council's advocacy priorities, the Bundaberg Jobs Commitment. The Regional Jobs Committee, or Jobs Bundaberg as it's known, its job is to promote skilling, training, employment programs in our region to our businesses, but it's also to collect intelligence from our business and take that back to the state government for the purposes of further design, refinement and funding of skilling, training, employment programs in our region. So it kind of acts like a consultative committee of industry representatives who advise the state government through this committee of training programs and pathways that we need in our area. The alignment that project has with the jobs commitment, it crosses over a little bit in terms of objectives and what it's aiming to achieve in terms of promoting skilling training programs in our region, but also engaging disengaged cohorts in the labour market through the promotion of training programs. So the MOU seeks to leverage the work that the Regional Jobs Committee is doing in support of what we're doing under the Bundaberg Jobs Commitment through sharing some of the resources that have been funded by DESBT through the Regional Jobs Committee and assisting us to expand the capacity of the Bundaberg Jobs Commitment program in our region. And the MOU talks about where those areas of crossover are and how we can share resources and deliver shared objectives of those two projects and organisations.
Thanks, Ben. Comments or questions? No? All good, thank you. The next item is F1. Yes, we will. Financial summary. Simon, welcome. 10:15 tomorrow.
Financial summary as at the 1st of March 2020. Current revenue, no large revenues of note there, which is often in regards to the current revenue. Probably just worth noting that the federal budget is handed down next week, which is pretty early. And so on the back of that, we'll know
As you can see in the graph, the forecast cash is greater than what we had, and that was due to delivery of the capital program. Rates outstanding, just probably worth noting there that we did resolve for 15 properties to proceed under the land for arrears process. We currently have 6 properties remaining on that list. The auction, should it be necessary, is scheduled to proceed next month. And just another thing worth noting around debtors, as advised previously, Spur had provided that a range of debts that we had with them would be written off, totaling about $30,000. That's been processed and is reflected in the figures within the report. Any questions?
Thanks, Simon. Comments or questions? Councillor Trevor.
Simon, you mentioned the fact that the capital spend is down. I just don't quite fully understand why some of the capital projects are running so late. I'll give you examples: Woodgate toilet block upgrade, the hall toilet block upgrade, the roof on the cultural centre at Childers, those things. Why are they so late in the second half of the year?
Councillor Trevor, I'm not sure. I'll take that on notice and come back to you on that. We do have a couple of staff in the room that may know, but I'll probably look to take that offline and give you an explanation of that, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. Any other comments or questions? Thank you. We'll send an email out with those details, with those projects that Councillor Trevor referenced. Okay, next item is G1, and I'll do this one given the fact that it's fairly straightforward, and Christine is at that forum that I mentioned earlier. So it's the sale of one of the last remaining lots in Heritage Oaks in Childers, and the recommendation is that Council apply the exception under the local government regulation for the disposal of lot 41 on SP2 10113, and that I be authorised to enter into a contract of sale with the buyer in order that we can finalise that sale. Any questions or comments? No? All right, thank you very much. And I'll consider that one done. And then the lease to Woodgate Beach Community Bus. Gav, welcome.
As the CEO said, I'm dealing with item G2, lease to Woodgate Community Bus Inc. So Council's been made aware of the fact that there's a community bus that operates out of Woodgate, run by a community group out there, provide transport. They put a request to Council asking for any available council land where they could build a shed to store the bus and some of the materials they have. Council staff had a look around in the Woodgate area. We've got a portion of land on 3rd Avenue that is currently utilised for a small parks depot and also some local emergency services groups, so SES and Rural Fire Brigade occupy that portion. The lease staff had a look at that and realised that they could probably excise a portion of that land that could be made available to the Community Bus Inc. group. And so the proposal is that we would provide that portion of land at the community rate, which is the discounted rate, and effectively it would be up to the group to sort funding for a shed in which they can then facilitate their request, which is to build some protection for the bus they operate. So happy to take any questions if there are any.
Yes, I'd like to ask about the excising of the land. Do we, as the council, have a requirement to survey that?
Yes, yeah. So as part of the elimination of that land, we had to break up, and I think one of the issues at the time we were concerned about was potential encroachment on the property boundary, but I think Nicole since addressed that, and we've found that it's not an issue. And so as part of that lease, we effectively have to survey that portion. Yeah.
Thanks, Gav. Any other questions? No? Very good, thank you. Then we move on to the council policy review. Amy.
Is that working? Coming to you today with the council policy review. So this is our biennial review of all council policies. Our policy owners have reviewed round one of the policies, and we've made some general amendments across all policies, including spelling and grammar, reordering of definitions, rephrasing of some sentences and paragraphs. So we've got no new policies for you today, and the previous amendments have been workshopped with councillors previously. There are some policies listed in the report which show some more detailed changes for you to consider, but the recommendation today is to rescind the previous version of the 19 policies listed there and to re-adopt those changes.
Thanks, Amy. Comments, questions, queries? Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you. There is quite a suite of policies up for recommendation, 19 in total. I was wanting to put in a request that, similar to what we do for our budget document, where we vote on each individual rate or charge, that we are offered the opportunity to vote on individual policies.
So 19 recommendations.
Yes, but in the interests of keeping our meetings as short as possible, the one particular policy I would like to ask that a separate recommendation be put forward is the media relations policy, please.
I think that's fine if you want to just identify specific ones to pull out. Yep. So is there any other councillor want any other specific policy pulled out? So we'll have, at this stage, we'll have two recommendations, one general one and then for all of them, and then one specifically for media relations. No? Okay, all right, all good. Thanks, Amy. The Bagara Semp. Councillor Honour's declared an interest, but he's going to stay in the room, so that's all good. Adam, welcome. You're in the hot seat.
I'm here this morning to present the report on the Bagara Shoreline Erosion Management Plan, which we know as the Bagara SEMP. So the Bagara coastline is quite unique, and it's got sections of sandy and rocky foreshores, rocky outcrops, pocket beaches and coastal structures. We know the coastal zones are naturally dynamic, and they're complex places that are highly valued by the community. The Bagara SEMP provides Council with a framework how to proactively plan for erosion management of the Bagara coastline and enables the natural coastal processes to be maintained. Along Bagara there's a dominant northern sediment transport. That means that sometimes there's periods where there's sediment deficiencies and it can lead to recession of that coastline. The intent of the action in the SEMP is to develop viable erosion management strategies and to integrate those across the Bagara shoreline, maximising social, economic, cultural and environmental benefits for the community. The recommended management options for the 4 key sites identified are in the table 1 in the report. Public feedback and comment was sought on the draft. There was a total of 9 submissions received and reviewed in detail, but resulted in no modifications to the final version of the SEMP. So attached to the report is the Bagara SEMP itself and the engagement summary report for information. So the recommendation is that Council adopt the Bagara Shoreline Erosion Management Plan and release it to the public. Any questions?
Thanks, Adam. Questions or comments? I might just like to say that there was a lot of work went into this, and congratulate Dwayne and his team for the work they've put into this over the last, 2 years, I guess, since it's it first kicked off. And I think we've got a great professional document at the end of that. Obviously with some issues that are still going to be addressed, but at least they're all out in the open. So thanks.
Can I make one comment on it too?
Councillor.
I'd echo your words about the staff contribution to it and the openness of the consultation with the community. I think by having these in place gives us a better handle on how to deal with these without having to go back to government all the time, which allows us to move in a more timely manner when some of these issues come. It also allows us to be able to go out and look for external funding with state and federal government, which is a big thing with some of these things because they can be quite expensive as well. So I also recommend the recommendation to council.
Thanks, Councillor Trevor. Any other comments, questions? No? All good? Thanks.
I'll pass those comments back to staff. Thank you.
Okay, we move into planning. Request for extended completion date. Councillor Honor and Councillor Trevor.
Thank you.
Michael, how you going? Top of everything. At least till 10 o'clock.
Good morning, councillors. The report before you today is in relation to a request to extend the completion date for a Building Bundaberg Region 2020 infrastructure agreement that relates to a development at 88 Esplanade Woodgate. The development that was approved last year received the incentives in March 2021, was approved for the incentives in March 2021. However, as you'll see from the report and the attachment, which includes the request from the developer, they have experienced considerable delays in trying to achieve substantial commencement of the development, primarily because of additional approvals, other expert consultants that are in short supply due to the development boom and other COVID-related delays. Accordingly, even though the precondition of the infrastructure agreement to make an extension request hasn't been met, it's considered that as the developer's taken substantial steps to progress the development, that in this case an extension request to the requested date of 6th of April 2023 is appropriate and is recommended to Council for approval.
Thanks, Michael. Comments or questions? No? All good, thank you. I'll get the other councillors back in. Toy Library sponsorship, Gov again.
Item I1, which is under our partnerships and sponsorship program, a request from YMCA on behalf of the Disability Resource Centre incorporating the Toy Library for some sponsorship. So historically, Council has supplied $10,000 in financial support for operation of the Toy Library. It was previously run by a community group. That responsibility has transferred and the YMCA have taken over the role of operating it, both the Disability Resource Centre and the Toy Library. So we put in a request under our partnership and sponsorship grants program. What they're seeking this financial year is $12,000, so an increase of $2,000 on what they've previously done. Part of the reason for that is they're proposing, as part of what the services they provide, is a new program called Bundy's Best for Babies and Beyond program, which is obviously dealing and helping assist infants, young babies and children in their development. So they've requested $12,000 in this particular instance, haven't indicated that that would be ongoing. Purely and simply, the $2,000 is to assist with staff time and some resourcing that resources they would need to purchase to commence that program. And the $10,000 is their normal request to fund their normal annual operations. So I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thanks, Gav. Councillor McPhee.
Gavin, did you say they didn't indicate whether the Best Babies was an ongoing program?
I didn't indicate whether they would be expecting that we would fund an additional $2,000 again next year, because their request was that they would purchase the resources which they expect they'd be able to use ongoing.
Yeah.
So they haven't sort of indicated that all of a sudden the $10,000 has increased to $12,000 ongoing. It's
Yeah.
just purely and simply a one-off, we understand, that additional two.
And I just have another question in relation to the application that has wages that are covered in there.
Yep.
Do we generally wages and operational expenses under grant applications, or is that just specific for this partnership and sponsorship?
Usually the grants we apply for, we can't put wages in some cases, but under ours we don't have a limitation
Okay.
on that particular thing. So yeah, so it's usually, they just have to demonstrate what the costs are and show us, and as you've seen, they've even got some quotes there that they've supplied in support of that application, but we don't, usually annual wages for things we don't usually do, but if it's a specific program we tend to fund that as eligible under the criteria.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Gav. Any other queries, questions? Nope. Okay, Rowing Queensland.
I'm back. So next item, Council, is R1, which is once again under our partnership sponsorship program, a request from Rowing Queensland for some financial support of the Queensland Schools Championship. So the Queensland Rowing came and saw us a while ago and indicated what they'd like to do is host for a multiple year event the Queensland Schools Rowing Championship out at Bucka. The intention is that they would conduct that in 22 and 23. Given it's a pretty significant event on the rowing calendar, schools are one of the biggest participatory groups in rowing and bring significant teams up here for that particular event. So Rowing Queensland asked if Council would be willing to support it and partner with them. Their initial request was for both a cash and an in-kind support. So the cash request was for $7,500 cash. Then the in-kind support was to provide effectively portable amenities, also do pump out, because they're operating on a septic system out there, and there'll be huge demand on that system as a result of having all the competitors there. So we got some advice from our water services area about the costs of those particular things, the septage charges, and also I guess the risk that Council would take if we provided the amenities. We looked at that as an option and have instead chosen to potentially increase our cash component and increase that to $12,500 instead, and that way it's entirely up to the rowing group to look after the amenities and do that bit, so we don't have that obligation. Happy to take any questions if there are any. And it's for a 2-year partnership.
Councillor McPhee.
Thank you. The difference, the 5,000 difference,
Yep.
Gavin, sorry, that that's in the recommendation there. That's made up of the approximate cost for the water services for the septic carters, the 4,160, and is it also approximate cost of what skip fins will cost? We can't provide.
More the amenities, so they were after demountable and portaloos and those sort of things, which, because they're, I guess, many groups believe that Council has those, sitting in depots and that we've got them, but we don't. We actually hire them ourselves. So we made them aware of the fact that, it wasn't really an in-kind support. That would be a cash support anyway, because we'd have to purchase them from a rental company. So we thought it's better that they coordinate that, because we're just a third step in the wheel. We'd have to organise the logistics. They know when their event on, they know where they want them, so we'd just be passing the information on. So we thought it might be simpler if we just give them the, financial support so they can organise that themselves.
Thank you. And then ours will just be wheelie bins.
That's right, yeah. So we'd look after the waste, provide some waste bins, and also undertake, obviously, the disposal of that material and collection.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gav. Any other questions on that one? No? Move on to Bowls Queensland.
Item R2, which is once again under our partnerships and sponsorships program, request from Bowls Queensland for some financial support for the 2023 juniors, state juniors. So they're proposed to be held in January next year. They've requested $5,000 in financial support towards this event. and the recommendation is that we would provide that. So I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thanks, Gav.
Okay, next item is R3. Oh, sorry, it's...
Possibilities.
I just ask whether I need to declare on this one the fact that I exhibit at the show in 3 different sections. It's not related to the horses. I've got budgies, cooking and photography. So do I need to declare that? CEO?
Thanks, Councillor Haberman. I think it's probably worth noting as a potential conflict, but it certainly wouldn't lead to you having to leave the room.
All right, so I will declare that and at the meeting, but we'll be intending to stay.
Only if you're wearing budgie smuggler.
No.
I think the word smuggler was omitted. Thanks, Councillor Haberman. Gavin.
I'll proceed? Yes.
Please,
Okay.
Austin.
Yes. Thank you, Councillor. So, as I said, item R3, which is once again under our partnership sponsorship program. So, request from Bundaberg AP and I Society Inc. So, I'll refer to them as the Bundaberg Show Society. So, they put on their annual show. And historically, council hasn't provided financial support for the show, but last year we did a once-off where we waived the hire fees for the venue, so the Bundaberg Recreational Precinct, for the period of the show, to assist the show, given the fact that we had, I guess, the unusual circumstances as a result of COVID, as they had to make it a COVID-safe event. There was going to be additional costs associated with that. Also, they expected that that might impact their numbers. And they took the risk, I guess, themselves to conduct a show where others had cancelled, and so council decided to support that through a waiver of fees last year. They've put in a request this year, have made it clear that they have no expectation, but thought they would ask, and their proposal is that council could either do one of 2 things. It could potentially provide $10,000 in cash support and be recognised as a platinum sponsor, specifically for the Queensland Show Jumping Championships that they'll be hosting this year at the show. Or alternatively, once again, as we did last year, we could waive the hire fees for the venue, which, based on what staff have advised, will be in the order of about $9,300 for the event. Alternatively, if council was in mind to provide some support but not to the same level, they provided effectively sponsorship packages which were available. The next level down from platinum is gold, which is $2,000 excluding GST. So I've put in recommendations in the report that council can either go with option 1, which is the platinum sponsorship at $10,000, or if they wish gold sponsorship at $2,000. So happy to take any questions if there are any.
Gavin, I noticed there has been around Queensland some other shows cancelled because of the onerous requirement that they say has come through the public health demands at shows. And in reading through some of the stuff, it does appear that you can do lots of things at the showgrounds, but if it's called an agricultural show, there's some onerous conditions. Is there any signs at all that some of those things may change prior to, I think the show's in May, is it not? That there may be some relaxation of any of those things by May?
It's a very good question, Councillor Trevor. The LGAQ have been discussing that at length with Queensland Health because, as you can appreciate, when the directive came out, it just said showgrounds, and many councils, not unlike ourselves, have a showground that might only be a showground for 3 days of the year and operates as many other things throughout the year. So the Chief Health Officer at the most recent statewide hookup indicated that they are unlikely to change the showgrounds because it has flow-on effects to other events, and then they'd be asked why have you changed the rules for this one and not another one. However, they have sort of said that a showgrounds, because they are multiple use, it's the nature of the use. So if it is a show, it's considered a ticket event, so people must be double vaxxed to attend. and they have to, the Show Society has to ensure that for everyone on entry. But if other activities are undertaken at Showgrounds that have been identified that are non-ticketed, they don't have to have that same requirement. So they've loosened up, I guess, the definition of Showgrounds to allow for the fact that they are multi-use facilities, but they've still got in place, and there's been no indication that there's any intention to change that for a show, you'll still be required to be double vaccinated to enter, because it's considered a ticket event.
Maybe they could have a football match on the same day, might alleviate it.
Might be a number of options, Councillor Trevor, yeah.
Thanks, Gav. Any other questions or comments on that one? No? Very good. Oh, did we get a direction about your or? One or two? Or are we going to leave it like that for the meeting? Well, yeah, but I just thought if we could get a... Yeah, it'll come up as, it'll go up as is, yes. Unless I can get a feel today for what might be, eligible, that's it. Councillor Hammond. As the option, unless anyone's vehemently opposed. All right, put the 10 up, and then if there's an alternate motion, you can go back to the 2. Okay, we've got a couple of items in confidential, so that's, was there any more late items in this? No, Ben's is being done as consultation. Racecourse lease.
Scout's back.
Did you forget? Excuse for a couple of minutes. Sure.
So, that's right. So, councillors, this item is regarding Bundaberg racecourse leases. I think there's been various discussions over a significant period of time. We finally got to the point now where we have an agreed document, but we need to tidy up a little bit. One, the resolution that was passed on at the meeting on in February, just because it had mentioned 5 years from that date. And just because we're trying to line the leases up and they were signed at different times between the two occupiers out at the Beaver Park, which is the Greyhound Racing Club, and also the Bundaberg Race Club. And so we're trying to line those leases up, given that they have common properties as part of this. And we also had to change one of the areas which was originally going to be a permit to occupy, but the race club has requested it to be leased, which is the marquee area where they put up their marquee. And so we've just had the resolution for this particular one is to amend that recent resolution to reflect now the request from the race club so that we can execute the agreement and also give the authority for the CEO to then enter into that lease for a 5-year term. Happy to take any questions if there are any.
Councillor McPhee.
What used to happen with the marquee? With
Sorry?
the marquee, was it?
There was the reason we're going through this is there has never been any tenure by either of the clubs.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're trying to tidy that up, and probably it's been driven by the fact that Racing Queensland-wide, wanted to ensure that there was tenure for all racecourses throughout Queensland, because when they're doing capital investment, they want to ensure that the club don't get kicked out then the following year because there's nothing on paper to sort of say they've got any tenure. So that was the driver for this whole process. Might remember it started 2 years ago now, I think, and we finally got to this point now where I think all parties are happy with the outcome, and we just need to execute the document because they already have got some capital improvements planned out there.
Yep, thank you.
Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you. Gavin, have we given any indication to the Bundaberg Race Club of our expectations on time frame for signing of the lease?
All right. Any other questions, comments? No? Thanks, Gav. So that concludes the general part of the meeting. And then we've got 2 items in confidential and then a short